What's going on, everyone? We're back with another True Detective Season 1 deep dive, this time for episode 4, titled Who Goes There? If you've been following us since the first episode, we love you, we fuck with you, we appreciate you. If this is your first time watching, go back and start from episode 1. We got the links in the description. No time to waste, let's get going. We left off episode 3 with a major discovery. Rianne Olivier, the girl who allegedly died in a flood a few years back, was dating Reggie Ledoux. A quick background check on Ledoux revealed that he recently skipped parole and his cellmate used to be Charlie Lange. Remember, Charlie was the ex-husband of Dora, the murdered girl who jump-started this whole investigation. So we gotta find Ledoux.
Yeah, he's the missing link for us. Last episode was more focused on building up the atmosphere, some commentary on religion, and some differences between the two detectives. This episode felt like higher stakes all around, and the plot moves pretty rapidly.
So now it's time for the boys to pay another visit to Charlie Lange. This visit is going to be way less friendly, and they got Charlie in close quarters in his cell. If he's bullshitting our boys, things are going to get violent.
Our guy Charlie channeling his inner Slim Shady at the end of 8 Mile with some of these responses here.
You don't know what I've been through?
Marty accuses Charlie of having Reggie Ledoux take out Dora, but it soon becomes clear that that isn't the case when Charlie spills the beans on Ledoux. In prison, it's normal for the guys to talk about pussy and big scores on the outside, and naturally Charlie showed off some naked pics of Dora to Reggie. Now Reggie Ledoux is a big, creepy, scary motherfucker, but he was a gifted chemist. That sick fuck could cook up some good drugs with a combo of kitchen cleaner, potato skins, and fry grease.
I'm picturing a white trash Walter White who most definitely gets high on his own supply.
Ledoux told Charlie some crazy shit when they were cellmates, talking about a place down south where all these rich men go to devil worship and sacrifice women and children. Reggie mentioned something about this place called Carcosa and a Yellow King and how there's so much good killing down there. Charlie also says Ledoux had a spiral tattoo on his back. At this point, Rust and Marty know that Ledoux is 100% involved in this shit, so they ask if Charlie knows any associates, and he mentions a dude named Tyrone Weems. Both Charlie and Reggie know Tyrone Weems, and he probably knows where Ledoux is hiding out at.
And Reggie with a spiral on him tells us that he works close enough with this Illuminati setup to be in good with them. Our biggest questions might be, how does he actually fit into the scene here? Does he grab the targets, make up drugs for the ceremonies? During the whole process, Marty starts off a little prickly, but ends up circling back to play a little good cop at Rust's expense.
It's gotta be tough. Living with somebody spouting insane shit in your ear.
As Rust and Marty are leaving, Charlie asks if he was partially responsible for Dora's death since he told Reggie about her, and Rust is brutally honest.
You probably had something to do with it.
You can tell Charlie feels terrible about this.
This is the highlight of the scene. Russ staring directly into Charlie's soul to get the point across that his own selfish actions caused immense harm. The timing of Charlie's groveling for a reward was not great.
You gonna give me something for what I told you just now? Parole board now. Fair's fair.
Anyone who takes their loved ones for granted is someone that Russ has had an issue with. We know this is his tendency, this is very in character for him.
So now the search is on for Tyrone Weems and Reggie Ledoux. Ledoux is difficult to track down though, since he doesn't have many family members around. The one person they find is a cousin named DeWall through his truck driver's license.
As a side note, guy's 6'7". Should have hooped or at least tried playing tight end instead of pursuing a life of scumbag criminal behavior. There's actually a funny line in here from Russ to Marty that showcases their philosophical differences, and it's that contrast of Marty preferring the bliss of ignorance, while Russ wants all the cards on the table and believes that's what everybody deserves, for better or worse.
You funny, Marty. Shit you get soft about.
The entire department gets briefed on the search. Reggie Ledoux is 35, caught a statutory rape charge against a 12-year-old but got acquitted due to a lack of testimony. Good God. Rust and Marty end up finding Tyrone Weems' mom, but she hasn't seen him in a few months. Tyrone sold her a microwave a few months back, so they got into a fight. Tyrone sounds like a real winner. Tyrone's mom does say that he used to date a girl named Kelsey, so there's another lead to follow. Marty ends up finding Kelsey, and it turns out that she's working as a stripper at a local club. She claims that she's broken up with Tyrone and hasn't seen him in months. When Marty asks for Tyrone's address and phone number, Kelsey walks away. Marty presses the bartender for more information, and he says that Kelsey's boyfriend came around a month ago collecting cash from her and tried to sell crystal meth to the girls. When he's shown a picture of Tyrone Weems, he confirms to Marty that this is indeed the man who came around for Kelsey. So Marty obviously knows that Kelsey is full of shit, and she's clearly still in contact with Tyrone.
Hate to judge a book by its cover, but Tyrone seems like a real dirtbag. The list of cameos we have from the Desperate Bayou really is a nice contrast to the fact that the people who are ultimately accused of being at the top of this occupy the upper class, seem to be protected in some way, which is definitely not the people we see the detectives canvassing during the initial stages of this case.
A motivated Marty is still a pretty solid detective, and he does some old-fashioned police work. Earlier in the day, Lisa just told Maggie everything, and Marty's entire marriage is in shambles. He doesn't have much left but his work, so he stakes out the strip club where Kelsey is working and tails her to this underground warehouse rave party where copious amounts of drugs are involved and some of the ravers are dropping like flies. You can smell the sweat and sex in the air. Yeah, baby. Good on Marty for staying properly hydrated though while he's driving.
What an absolutely grimy backdrop Marty gets to show his true colors here. When that bullshit gets stripped away, he's still got the tools to be near Rust's level with his intuition and his grit. Even though his personal life is going to hell, it seems like his detective skills are pretty sharp.
So Marty follows Kelsey to an outdoor area where she's talking to Tyrone. When Tyrone walks away to a back area, Marty approaches with a gun and roughs Tyrone up a bit until he gets the information he needs. Tyrone says that Reggie is working for a bike gang called the Iron Crusaders. Ledoux doesn't sell anymore, he just cooks for this one client and they buy all of his stuff in bulk. Marty fills Rust in on the info, and it turns out that Rust actually knows the Iron Crusaders from back in his undercover days.
Incredible character reveal. It sort of looks like Tyrone is a Danny McBride character mixed with Riff Raff if he fell on really bad times.
If you make a fucking bet with Steve, you fucking pay Steve when his fucking cock wins.
From Rust's perspective, we know he was an undercover narco who was hooked on most of the shit he was investigating, and it seems like a realization is dawning after he hangs up that phone. This is not a part of his life he looks back on fondly.
Rust tells Marty that the Iron Crusaders are a serious bike gang out of East Texas, and according to Rust's old handler, his cover hasn't been blown yet. Everyone thinks that he took 3 slugs in that DEA shootout and died. Rust's undercover name was Crash. Rust gets ready to go undercover, and he pulls out a metal container with all the necessary supplies, guns, grenades, ammo, some Jameson with a flask. He tells the force that he's taking some personal time to go see his dad, but in reality he's going to disappear for a bit and hang around in Texas, getting seen by the Iron Crusaders. This entire operation has to be off book since that's the only way they'll get close to the gang.
This opens up a little bit of character discussion too. He really hasn't put those old days and his past behind him. It's something that continues to gnaw at him, and much like Marty, he's got his own way of escaping right back into it. There's being honest with yourself, and then there's repeatedly punishing yourself while seeking a little enjoyment throughout the process. Is it necessary for the case for him to do this? Sure. But we can tell from the present that Rust still likes an adult beverage or two, so he may have continued to slip past this point as well. At what point do you start losing yourself within the job again? There are a couple good lines at the end of the scene where Marty begins to gain a little more empathy for Rust after what he went through as a narco.
It was a long time being like that.
Rust's planning is meticulous. He injects himself with a mix of ink and cayenne to make his arms look like a junkie's. He goes into the evidence lab at the department to grab some good coke, and he replaces it with baking powder. Nobody will notice though, since no one in the department is really doing any work. This dude right here is just looking at porn mags.
They really should have a better system for this.
Now, a week or two goes by and Rust has been seen around in East Texas by enough of the right people, so now it's time to kick the plan into action. A guy that Rust used to run with back when he was Crash wants to meet him tonight. If Rust can get him alone, then he and Marty will snatch him up and work him over to get to Ledoux. Rust hands Marty a phone to stay in contact with him in case anything goes wrong. Marty is still a wreck from the whole Maggie situation, so he asks Rust what meeting with Maggie was like. Rust tells Marty that he could see them getting back together in a few months. Sort of a lie in that moment, but he's got to make sure Marty is on point or else this whole operation will be a disaster.
What you're seeing now is the extreme of what can happen when Rust obsesses about a case a little too much. We're going to talk more about how Marty's maneuvers in the beginning of this episode are incredibly fucked up, but while we're focused on Rust for a moment, he's not a stranger to intensive manipulation. It feels a little more gross here against Marty though, because it's his partner and not a suspect he's trying to get a confession from. There's still a similar thread of thought process that goes behind that.
Rust pulls up to the biker bar, which is scary as fuck. Marty is in another car waiting outside. The meeting with Ginger takes a twist though. Rust originally wanted to propose a deal with Ginger. He'll trade coke for the gang's meth. Ginger seems interested but asks Rust for a more immediate favor. He's planning on robbing a stash house and wants Rust to be a member of his crew. If Rust can come through, then Ginger will put Rust in touch with their supplier, which we all know is Reggie Ledoux. Rust has no choice but to agree to the deal. He wants to go back out to his truck first to tip Marty off, but Ginger leaves him no choice, and Rust has to hop in the boat and go to Ginger's place right from the bar. Fortunately, Marty is a good homie, and he tries to infiltrate the bar and find Rust. Marty gets kicked out, but he does happen to get a glimpse of Rust as he's boarding the little dinghy boat. What happens next is pure adrenaline. We actually did a detailed breakdown of the entire Project's raid scene, so if you haven't watched that, I'll include the link in the description. Anyways, Ginger's plan is fucking dumb. They've captured one of the drug dealers named Tiger Thomas, and they want to dress up as cops and use Tiger to raid the stash house. They have zero contingency plans, zero idea on how to escape. We won't go into heavy detail on this whole operation, but this is definitely my favorite scene in the entire season. I remember being laid up in bed during college winter break on pain meds post wisdom teeth surgery. When this scene was over, I got up and was legitimately sweating from the excitement, or maybe it was just from the opioids, who the fuck knows.
Couldn't agree with you more on that one, Chen. This is one of those scenes that changes the game. The first time you ever see this episode, nothing is the same afterwards. I love The Wire, it's one of my favorite shows, and there are some excellent scenes in that as well, from the stash raids to some of the higher stakes moments, but I don't really think that anything compares to both what's on the line and the overall intensity, add in the camera work. I mean, if you had Scorsese direct this as a short film, it might qualify for an Oscar nom. Like, this is incredible television. A big thing that sticks out throughout the whole sequence is that Rust stays composed more so than everybody else. Check anyone's face around here, they all look like they're gonna piss their pants. Part of that can probably be explained by the fact that he's already stated he's down to die and will live with whatever consequences result from this mission. Nihilist, realist, pessimist, label him whatever you like. The man's got ice in his veins.
Obviously, the raid goes off the rails and everyone in the party dies except for Rust and Ginger. Fortunately, Rust told Marty to be listening to the Beaumont police channels all night in case he loses him.
It means if you lose track of me tonight, keep this fucker handy and be listening to Beaumont police channels.
So when Rust initially gets escorted away by Ginger, Marty takes one of the highway exits for Beaumont. This is huge because when Rust finally gets a phone and hits Marty on the burner, Marty is close enough where he can actually make it on time and bail them out. Also, Ginger only survives because Rust wants to keep him alive. He would have gotten murked in the projects for sure otherwise. Incredible scene. So now let's discuss Rust and Marty's personal lives in 95. Each episode we get more and more of a glimpse of what actually happens. So in this episode, Marty's infidelity finally gets exposed and it's all his fault. Obviously he cheated, so it's his fault, but I'm saying Maggie would have never known if he just wasn't such a dick to Lisa. First of all, the shit Marty pulled by breaking into Lisa's house was out of control, but even then, it seems like he could have been fine if he had just talked to Lisa and apologized to her. We see this in the courtroom when Marty is giving a statement on some other case he's involved in.
There's some irony in the fact that Lisa was taking court notes on Marty entering someone's home without permission after, you know.
Yeah, and obviously Lisa is furious and wants to talk to Marty, and this fucker just brushes her off. If Marty had genuinely apologized, she might have let it slide, but he's such an asshole that he can't even do that.
And part of that goes back to a major character flaw we saw emerge earlier on in the season. Marty wants control of the women around him in some way, and when he loses that, he cannot handle it. He sees Lisa as a way to fulfill pleasures and blow off some steam, a release from the family man role that he tries to put on. She's not an equal to him in his eyes, and eventually that line of thinking is gonna get you burned.
Yup, and Marty then comes home to find his bags all packed with a letter from Maggie. Apparently Lisa came over and told Maggie everything. Maggie took the kids and is now staying at her parents' place and wants Marty to get his stuff and get the fuck out.
I'm sure the madam from the brothel would have laughed her ass off watching this shit go down. Another thing this season does well is using the internal thoughts and reflections of the detectives in the interrogation scenes to springboard right into an emotionally charged moment like the suitcase scene gave us. We can tell from Marty's facial expression that he's fallen back into that same rough memory pattern he began last episode versus another detail to add to the case.
Marty does try to get Maggie back by pulling up to her hospital during her night shift and causes an absolute scene. Rust has to get called in to resolve the situation. Marty tries to vent to Rust, but Rust wants no part of it. He's all business.
Yeah, this guy might have some anger issues. Marty's implosion after reading that letter is pretty visceral. Woody Harrelson brought the big guns this time. You can feel everything around him falling into shambles, and just going to shit in general. This is the danger of assembling a fragile house of cards the way he did. It's that bad habit that perpetuates the blissful ignorance and self-deception Marty's grown accustomed to. In many ways, he's a pretty sad dude. The blow up right after his manipulation routine fails again is too predictable. When Marty then moves in with Rust, there is something interesting that happens where he gets a little more reflective. That eye mirror that Rust uses to self-assess and look inward is a cool recurring piece. From Rust's pulse checks to this, he likes to check in on himself and meditate on it. Let's hope a little bit of that introspection can rub off on Marty. The man needs it.
Rust does need Marty to have his head on somewhat straight, since Marty is going to be the one watching Rust back during the whole off-the-books operation. So Rust meets with Maggie at a diner to deliver a message from Marty, and there does seem to be some potential there for Maggie to give Marty a second chance. She does end up saying some offensive shit to Rust, and he leaves the diner immediately.
It adds up, right? Rust isn't actually trying to solve the roots of Marty's issues because, well, shit. We need a few more seasons to get that taken care of. He's slapping duct tape over the leaks and hoping the ship is just gonna ride out until the case gets solved. The case, the lead, the suspect, these are the things that Marty does well and can thrive in. It's easy to engage him in that area so it can serve as a productive outlet while the rest of his world is quietly falling apart. And also loudly falling apart. Trying to argue against the feasibility of monogamy to a woman who's been run around on probably was not the smoothest idea by Rust.
We age. Men, women, it's not supposed to work except to make kids.
We also get a bit more in this episode on Rust's upbringing. By 2012, his dad is obviously dead, but growing up, Rust and his dad didn't like each other. His dad met Rust's mom when he was on military leave in Galveston. He returned from Vietnam when Rust was 2, and Rust's mom promptly dumped young Rust and ran off. Rust's dad took him and went to Alaska. Since Rust hated the cold, as soon as he was old enough, he left for Texas, and his dad always felt betrayed.
For me, this gave a little more insight as to how in the hell Rust ended up like he did beyond just the trauma of losing his wife and his daughter previously. Some of these traits we've seen, coldness, calculation, a propensity for the philosophical rabbit holes, etc., definitely came from his old man. A couple episodes back, Rust mentions reflecting on his own mother, despite not really having the ability to remember much about her. Seems like he still introspects on that part of his life and has some missing pieces from his childhood that haven't quite made it back into place.
Let's wrap up by talking more about the 2012 timeline where Papania and Gilbough suspect Rust as the true murderer. They keep pointing out some inconsistencies that they discover. They went back to the Alaskan town that Rust's dad is from, and nobody in that town had seen him in the last 30 years. When Rust took his sabbatical in '95 to hang around the Iron Crusaders, he told everyone in CID that his dad was suffering from leukemia. Well, Papania and Gilbough went through hospital records in Alaska and couldn't find anything confirming that his dad was sick. To them, this looks sketchy as fuck, but Marty obviously knows the real story, so he just has to stay quiet and not give it away.
These two are most definitely still on the scent here. We're just lucky that Marty and Rust have done a surprisingly good job tying up their loose ends. It doesn't seem like Marty would flip, and Marty being separated from Maggie at the time all this went down is a blessing in disguise because Marty is really the only person who would have knowledge of what Rust was truly up to at the moment.
Well, that does it for our episode 4 recap. We will be back with episode 5 very shortly. Appreciate y'all watching. Catch y'all later.